Life, they say, is a tapestry woven with threads of joy and sorrow, love and loss. But what happens when the most vibrant thread, the one you believed was the strongest, unravels right before your eyes, revealing a gaping hole of betrayal? What happens when the person you trusted with your deepest secrets, your most fragile dreams, turns out to be nothing more than a master of deception? My story, my friends, begins with such a betrayal, a wound so profound it reshaped the very core of my existence. It's a story about lies that shattered a world, and a revenge that left everyone, including myself, utterly speechless. I remember Mark as if it were yesterday. He walked into my life like a summer breeze, charming, witty, with a smile that could melt glaciers. We met at a quaint little coffee shop, tucked away on a cobblestone street, and from that first shared laugh over a spilled latte, I felt an undeniable connection. He had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room, his gaze unwavering, his words laced with a sincerity that seemed almost too good to be true. And perhaps, it was. Our romance blossomed quickly, a whirlwind of shared dreams and late-night confessions. He was an aspiring architect, full of grand visions of designing eco-friendly skyscrapers that would touch the clouds. I, a budding artist, found inspiration in his ambition, his passion for creation. We spent countless hours sketching together, him drawing intricate blueprints, me capturing the essence of his dreams on canvas. We were two halves of a whole, or so I believed. We talked about everything, our childhood memories, our deepest fears, the kind of future we envisioned. A future that, in my mind, was undeniably intertwined. He spoke of marriage, of a little house with a garden where our children would play, of growing old together, watching the sunsets from a porch swing. He had this way of painting a picture so vivid, so real, that I could almost feel the warmth of the sun on my face, the gentle sway of the swing. He was everything I had ever dreamed of, and more. He met my family, charming them with his impeccable manners and genuine interest in their lives. My mother, usually so cautious, adored him. My father, a man of few words, would often say, "He's a good one, honey." A keeper. Their approval, their shared joy for my happiness, solidified my belief that this was real, that this was forever. I poured my heart and soul into our relationship, investing not just my emotions, but my time, my energy, my very identity. I helped him with his architectural projects, spending sleepless nights researching sustainable materials, sketching preliminary designs, even helping him craft compelling presentations for his university courses. His successes felt like my successes, his triumphs, my triumphs. We were a team, a formidable force against the world, or so I foolishly thought. The first crack in the facade was almost imperceptible, a tiny tremor beneath the surface of our perfect world. He started working longer hours, sometimes staying out late without a clear explanation. When I asked, he'd offer vague excuses about demanding professors or last-minute client meetings for his internship. I tried to be understanding, supportive. After all, ambition was one of the things I admired most about him. But a seed of doubt, no matter how small, had been planted. And as we all know, even the tiniest seed, given the right conditions, can grow into a formidable tree, its roots eventually tearing apart everything in its path. The whispers began subtly, like distant echoes in a quiet room. A missed call from a number I didn't recognize on his phone, quickly dismissed as a wrong number. A fleeting scent of a different perfume on his clothes, explained away as a colleague's presence. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. My entire world, my future, was built around the image of us, a future he had so meticulously crafted with his words. To question him too deeply felt like questioning my own judgment, my own happiness. So, I pushed the doubts away, burying them under layers of trust and desperate hope. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent. He became more distant, his once unwavering gaze now often darting away when I asked about his day. Our shared laughter became less frequent, replaced by awkward silences. He started taking his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom, something he had never done before. When I playfully reached for it once, he snatched it away with a sharp, almost defensive gesture that sent a chill down my spine. "It's just work stuff," he mumbled, but his eyes told a different story. They held a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher, fear. Guilt. One evening, he told me he had a major presentation for a prestigious architecture firm, a make-or-break moment for his career. He would be gone for a few days, staying in a hotel near the firm's headquarters. He seemed genuinely stressed, and I, being the supportive partner I believed myself to be, encouraged him, packed his bags, and wished him luck with a heavy heart. The house felt empty without him, the silence amplifying my growing anxieties. I tried to focus on my art, but my brushstrokes lacked their usual fluidity, my colors seemed dull. A few days into his supposed business trip, I received a call from a mutual friend, Sarah. Her voice was hesitant, laced with a concern that immediately put me on edge. "Hey, have you seen Mark lately?" she asked, her tone almost a whisper. I explained about his presentation, trying to sound confident, but my voice wavered slightly. There was a pause on the other end, a loaded silence that felt heavier than any spoken word. "Oh," she finally said, I thought I saw him at the new art gallery opening last night. With someone, but I must have been mistaken. He's probably working hard, right?" The words hit me like a physical blow. The art gallery opening. He knew how much I loved art galleries. We had promised to go to that specific one together. And with someone. The image of him, laughing with another woman, flashed in my mind, a cruel twist of the knife in my already aching heart. I tried to dismiss it, to rationalize it away. Sarah must have been mistaken. It was a big city, full of people who looked alike. But the seed of doubt, now watered by suspicion, began to sprout, its tendrils reaching out, tightening their grip around my throat. I called Mark, my voice trembling as I tried to sound casual. "How's the presentation going?" I asked, feigning enthusiasm. His voice was smooth, a little tired, but otherwise normal. He spoke of long hours, demanding critiques, the pressure of it all. He even added, "Miss you, babe. Can't wait to be home." The words, once so comforting, now felt hollow, tainted by the image Sarah had painted in my mind. I hung up, my hand shaking, the phone feeling impossibly heavy. That night, sleep offered no escape. My mind raced, replaying every conversation, every interaction, every subtle shift in his behavior. The pieces of the puzzle, once scattered and seemingly unrelated, were slowly starting to connect, forming a picture I desperately didn't want to see. The whispers of deceit were no longer distant echoes, they were a thunderous roar in my ears, demanding to be heard. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that something was terribly wrong. And the truth, I feared, would be far more devastating than any lie. The silence that followed the unveiling of Mark's deceit was the most profound I had ever experienced. It wasn't the silence of peace, but the deafening hush of a world utterly broken. My tears had run dry, replaced by a cold, heartache in my chest. I felt hollowed out, an empty shell of the person I once was. The love I had felt for Mark had curdled into something bitter, something venomous. It was a feeling I barely recognized, a burning desire for retribution, a thirst for justice that consumed every fiber of my being. I stared at his sleeping face, so innocent, so peaceful, and a surge of pure, unadulterated rage coursed through me. How could he look me in the eye, make those promises, and then systematically dismantle my world with his lies? He didn't just break my heart, he shattered my trust, distorted my perception of reality, and made me question every moment we had ever shared. The sweet memories, once cherished, were now tainted, poisoned by the truth. In the days that followed, I moved through life like a ghost. I went to work, interacted with friends, but it was all an act. Beneath the forced smiles and polite nods, a storm was brewing. I knew I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't allow him to walk away, unscathed, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. The thought of him continuing his life with Chloe, living out the very future he had promised me, was unbearable. He needed to understand the pain he had inflicted, the devastation he had caused. He needed to face the consequences of his actions. My initial thoughts were chaotic, fueled by raw emotion. I envisioned screaming at him, exposing him to everyone we knew, tearing down his carefully constructed reputation. But as the initial shock began to subside, a cooler, more calculating resolve began to take hold. I knew that raw emotion, while satisfying in the moment, rarely led to true justice. I needed a plan, something precise, something that would hit him where it hurt the most, something that would leave a lasting impact, not just on him, but on everyone who had witnessed his deception. I spent hours alone, poring over his phone, meticulously documenting every message, every photo, every piece of evidence. I researched his prestigious architecture firm, the one he claimed to be interning for. To my shock, I discovered they had no record of him. Another lie. His entire life, it seemed, was a house of cards, built on a foundation of deceit. But beneath the anger, a curious thought began to form. What if his lies weren't just about me? What if there were others? Other victims of his charming deception? The more I uncovered, the more intricate the web of his deceit appeared. He wasn't just a casual liar, he was a master manipulator, a chameleon who adapted his persona to fit each situation, each person. He had separate email accounts, different social media profiles, all carefully curated to maintain his various falsehoods. It was a dizzying display of premeditated deception, and the realization only strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about my personal revenge, it was about exposing a predator, a man who preyed on the trust and vulnerability of others. The idea of justice, of making him accountable, began to replace the initial, purely emotional desire for revenge. I realized that my revenge wouldn't just be about him, it would be about reclaiming my own power, my own narrative. It would be about showing the world, and more importantly, myself, that I wouldn't be a victim. I would be a survivor, a force to be reckoned with. The low growl that had been building in the background intensified, no longer a sound of mere anger, but of a quiet, determined strength. The seeds of vengeance, watered by betrayal and fueled by a desire for justice, had begun to sprout, pushing through the barren wasteland of my broken heart. With the seeds of vengeance firmly planted, I began to meticulously craft my plan. I wasn't interested in a fleeting outburst or a dramatic confrontation that would quickly fade from memory. I wanted something precise, something surgical, something that would dismantle his carefully constructed world piece by piece, just as he had dismantled mine. My art, once an outlet for beauty and emotion, now became a tool for analysis, for strategy. I approached my revenge with the same meticulous detail I would a complex painting, each stroke intentional, each color chosen for maximum impact. My first step was to discreetly gather all the evidence. I copied every incriminating text message, every photo, every email. I cross-referenced dates, times, and locations, building an irrefutable timeline of his deception. I even managed to find the real LinkedIn profile of the prestigious firm he claimed to be working for and confirmed, without a shadow of a doubt, that he was not, and had never been, associated with them. His entire professional ambition, which I had so admired and supported, was a fabrication. He wasn't an aspiring architect, he was an aspiring fraud. The more I dug, the more layers of his deceit I uncovered. He had borrowed money from several friends, promising to pay them back with his big break in architecture, money he had clearly used to fund his lavish lifestyle with Chloe. He had even used my name, without my knowledge, to secure a small loan for a supposed business venture, a venture that, predictably, never materialized. He was not just a betrayer of hearts, he was a financial manipulator, a con artist. I realized that exposing him publicly in a fit of rage would be gratifying, but ultimately, it wouldn't inflict the kind of lasting damage I sought. It would be a messy, emotional affair, and he might even be able to spin the narrative, painting me as a scorned ex-lover. No, I needed to hit him where it truly mattered, his reputation, his financial stability, and his ability to deceive others. I needed to expose him in a way that left no room for doubt, no possibility of redemption. My plan began to take shape, forming a clear, devastating trajectory. I focused on two key areas: his professional life and his personal relationships. I knew that for someone like Mark, who thrived on admiration and outward success, the destruction of his public image would be the most crippling blow. And the exposure of his multiple deceptions to his other victims would be the ultimate unraveling of his carefully curated life. I spent countless hours researching legal avenues, quietly consulting with friends who were lawyers, though I framed it as hypothetical questions for a fictional story. I learned about defamation, fraud, and the different ways to present undeniable evidence. I knew I couldn't be impulsive. I had to be strategic, patient, and above all, utterly ruthless. The pulsing beat in the background intensified, now joined by the subtle click of a clock ticking, reminding me that time was both my ally and my enemy. I felt a strange sense of clarity, a cold precision I hadn't known I possessed. The pain was still there, a constant throb in my heart, but it was now channeled, transmuted into a powerful, focused energy. I was no longer the heartbroken artist, I was the architect of ruin, and Mark was about to witness the meticulous deconstruction of everything he had ever built on a foundation of lies. The gears of my plan were turning, slowly but surely, grinding towards an inevitable, crushing conclusion. The stage was set, my evidence was meticulously organized, irrefutable, and damning. The plan, once a nebulous idea, was now a finely tuned machine, ready for deployment. I decided to initiate the domino effect during a period when Mark felt most secure, when his guard was down, just before his supposed trip with Chloe. I wanted him to experience the full shock of his world crumbling around him, brick by brick, lie by lie. My first move was strategically subtle. I anonymously sent a detailed, evidence-backed email to the admissions office of the prestigious university he claimed to have graduated from, highlighting the discrepancies in his academic record and his fraudulent claims of internships with top architectural firms. I provided links to his various fake online profiles and cross-referenced them with the actual professionals he was pretending to be. I included screenshots of the texts and photos that revealed his fraudulent work trips were actually romantic getaways with Chloe. I ensured the email was untraceable, a ghost in the machine. Within days, the first domino fell. Mark received an official letter from his university, informing him of an immediate investigation into his academic credentials and internship claims. He was suspended pending the outcome, his degree, now under intense scrutiny. I watched from a distance, observing his frantic calls, his bewildered expressions. He tried to brush it off as a misunderstanding, but the seed of doubt had been planted in his own mind. He had no idea the scope of the avalanche that was about to descend upon him. Next, I turned my attention to his professional reputation. I created a discreet online portfolio, showcasing my own architectural design skills, but strategically included a case study of a recent project where I subtly highlighted the dangers of unethical practices and fraudulent claims in the industry. I made sure it would appear in searches related to the prestigious firm he claimed to work for, a silent warning to anyone who might consider working with him. I also sent anonymous tips to a few industry forums and groups, gently suggesting they verify the credentials of certain rising stars in architecture. The second domino fell. Within weeks, hushed whispers about Mark's questionable background began circulating in professional circles. Potential clients started asking more pointed questions, and some even withdrew their offers. His meticulously crafted image as a talented, ethical architect began to fray, exposing the imposter beneath. I could see the panic in his eyes, the desperate attempts to salvage his reputation, but the damage was done. The foundation of his professional life, built on lies, was crumbling. But the most devastating blow, the one that would truly leave him speechless, was yet to come. I compiled all the evidence of his financial deceptions, the loans from friends, the small loan taken in my name, and anonymously sent it to the relevant authorities, along with detailed documentation of his other fraudulent activities. I also discreetly reached out to the friends he had borrowed money from, gently suggesting they check in on their investments with Mark, subtly nudging them towards the truth. The final domino, the most crucial one, was aimed directly at his personal life. I sent an anonymous, carefully worded email to Chloe, attaching only a single, undeniable piece of evidence, a picture of Mark and me, smiling, holding hands, with a date stamped from a time he was supposedly on a business trip with her. I added no explanation, no accusations, just the image, letting the visual speak volumes. I wanted her to experience the same gut-wrenching realization, the same shattering of trust, that I had endured. The domino effect was in full swing. Mark's world, once so stable and carefully controlled, was spiraling into chaos. The rhythmic sounds of the falling dominoes intensified, each click echoing the collapse of another piece of his deceitful existence. He was the architect of his own ruin, and I was merely the catalyst, setting in motion a chain of events that he himself had initiated with his lies and betrayals. The culmination was fast approaching, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the true spectacle, the moment he would be utterly speechless, was just around the corner. The crash of the final domino reverberated not just through Mark's life, but through our shared social circles. The once vibrant hum of his carefully constructed facade had been replaced by the unsettling hum of an engine of truth, slowly revving up to full power. My revenge was not about public spectacle or dramatic confrontation in the traditional sense. It was about a quiet, methodical unmasking, allowing the weight of his own lies to crush him. Within days of the final email reaching Chloe, the fallout began. I saw Mark, haggard and pale, desperately trying to call Chloe, his pleas echoing through the phone, unanswered. He tried to contact his former friends, the